today's conversation is all about young women who are influencing policy at different levels and in different industries. So why don't I let my panelists today introduce themselves.
My name is Quinta Odongo. I'm the CEO of Certified Sports Management Agency. I'm working towards pushing the agenda towards sports policies.
My name is Nerima Wako Ojiwa, and I'm the Executive Director of Siasa Place. I focus mainly on youth participation in governance.
My name is Bina Maseno. I run Badili Africa, and at Badili Africa we're passionate about how young women understand governance and how they can play a meaningful role in their communities. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Was this something that any of you had ever thought would come to be, looking back when you were looking at the future, what it is that you want to do? For any of you, was there a place of saying, I can see things are not the way they should be in a certain industry, I want to make a difference? Or did you kind of find yourself in these spaces due to the networks you formed along the way? Any one of you can go. How did you end up being in a space where you're actually able to influence policy?
I think I stumbled on it. So my background is in journalism. Although I did public administration, I always thought that I would be in the development world. I still am, but didn't think that I would run an organization that focuses on youth. So it started with conversations about politics, and then it sort of just evolved to where are the youth discussing politics, and then forming a space where youth discuss politics. And so I know a lot of people ask me if I've done law. I haven't. And I've sort of just learned the Constitution along the way.
Okay. Learning on the go.
I think for me, I have grown into it, having accessed education with a sports scholarship, then getting into that space, and an issue after an issue, you realize as an athlete, this is not right. This is not the right way that things should be done. You grow into it and you realize, you get to a point where there are no more opportunities for you, either from an academic point of view or technical point of view. Then I realized there's something that has to be done, and it has to be done now. Okay. Then you find a way of getting to the next position that carves your way to the next position, and you get yourself discussing policies because it affects the opportunities.
Okay. I think for me, I realized if you don't show up and speak up about what affects you, then nothing's going to happen. And for me, it was until I ran for political seat to actually represent the issues that I was passionate about and that my community was passionate about, that I realized, you know what? Beyond not winning a seat, something needs to be done. And especially the fact that I didn't see young voices in that particular space, I realized, you know what, I need to create a platform where people understand why they need to engage in that particular space, and that no one is going to speak up for you, no one. If you don't do it yourself, no one's going to think about you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's incredible that you all found a way to turn that passion into doing something, and later, I know it'll be interesting to get your suggestions on how more people can be engaged. But for now, we have a lot of highly educated women, etc. But when it comes to influencing policy, when it comes to leadership, a lot of the time people might argue you don't find the same number of women who have the qualifications translating to the number of women who hold these leadership positions, or who are able to turn that into being maybe policy advocacy, influence, and that kind of thing. Why do you think that is the case, if it is at all accurate? Why are we not seeing enough of the educated women translating to leadership?
I think it's what revolves around legislation. It's a lingo, it's jargon, it's complicated, it's boring, it's technical. So it's a lot of research. And it's a lot of understanding particular sectors, because it's very specific. Policies are related to specific sectors of our lives. So something in sports will be very different to something in business, in fuel, very specific. So once you understand what your niche is, I think also the way it's structured, unfortunately, we make policies first and then we bring it down to the community. Yet in our constitution, you're supposed to involve the community in building solutions. What does that policy look like? What's the priority area? So it's not actually supposed to be the educated. It should be everybody at the table. And then we bring in the technocrats later to tell us, okay, this is what the policy should look like.
Yeah.
And that's where we're having a lot of issues where people always say, oh, Kenya, we have such great laws, but what we're lacking is implementation.
Yeah.
We
But-
hear that.
But
all
there
the
is
time.
truth to that, though.
There
you would
is.
say, right?
There is, and that's some of the gaps as to why. So when people are not involved, stakeholders are not involved in building policy, it's very difficult to implement because a lot of people don't know it exists, and then a lot of people are unaware of what it does to impact their own lives.
I like what you're saying in terms of it should be from the grassroots informing up. That should inform the policy. But I want to come to you, Quinta, based on what Nerima has said, the technocrats, the jargon, etc. And going back to my question about women not being involved, you are in a very male-dominated space, hugely male-dominated. You talked about at the time when you were CEO, I think, explain that story to me, and the fact that you were the only woman sitting with like a group of 18 plus men.
I believe we have intentionally made sports male-dominated by what we do and the opportunities we create and the programs we run as a country. Because for women to participate and be experts on sports management and policy and engage at that high level, we need them to participate and be part of the system at the bottom of the pyramid, because that's where that's where the youth and the women are. But the technocrats and the strategies are the top level. Unfortunately, as Nerima said, as a nation, we start top, bottom. But at the end of the day, we need them to be part of the system. We need them to participate. We need them to engage, to understand that sports is a human right. So if you understand it from a point of it's a human right, then how do we protect it? How do we promote it? How do we develop it? My experience as one of the, at that point when I was the only female CEO for Kariobangi Sharks at the Kenya Premier League, was a learning process. Because it's a bit tough when you get into that space as a young woman and you're engaging with people of age and they're male-dominated. The first conversation they have with you is from a gender point of view. This is a male-dominated sport. What do you know about it? I mean, I had to step out and go study sports management at an international level. So by the time I come back home, then I have academics to back me up before they speak about gender, before they speak about your age. Then you understand the industry, you understand the sector, you understand the challenges that the sector faces, and you have solutions to it. Because understanding the challenges is one thing. Having the solutions and some of the solutions to the challenge, then it's another thing. But unfortunately, over the years, we've not been keen to pave the way for young women to have opportunities to experience management, sports management at a top level, because they've not taken part in the sport.
Right. And that also is because, do they also feel intimidated about the fact that sports is just very, at least optics-wise, very male-dominated, or why isn't there enough participation?
I think we've looked at sport from a very technical point of view. Sport is as basic as physical activity. And when we look at physical activity, it's about your health. It's about the next generation of being active. We're dealing with a lot of non-communicable diseases, mental health, diabetes, obesity. But where does the next generation get physical activity literacy? From their parents or from the school? But in this industry as sports, we don't have a collaborative model that brings the Department of Education, the Department of Health, and the Department of Sports together to bring the framework into function.
And I feel like that would work for so many other policies if we had different parties coming together. Going back to, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I want to comment on what both of them have said. Part of it is you cannot engage what you don't understand. So if you don't understand something, you keep off, to start with. And majority of the people, and not just only women, majority of the people, they primarily consume knowledge from social media and from from TV interviews. TV interviews are probably very, very brief. So you can imagine if you have just the two of them discussing a particular policy, you only have like 10 minutes to discuss a policy, and you probably won't have enough time to break it down for everybody to understand. And part of it also is how we mobilize, even when it comes to civil society engagements. We mobilize other people who are in civil society spaces. I don't bring you from the media. I don't bring another person from the business, business industry. So at the end of the day, even when you leave that particular space, we know, but then she's not there. She's, her industry is sports, but she probably won't be there when we are doing something to do with governance and all that. She won't be there.
Right.
So she won't go to influence that space. Maybe you won't be there, maybe as a journalist in that particular space, because apparently you don't come from a civil society background, you don't work for any NGO, so you want to be there to even go and talk about what you learned there, you know, even on your own social media platforms. So part of it is how we mobilize, and part of it is how we break down information, and also part of it is even when it comes to the guys who are being interviewed, I always say there's a difference between information, infotainment, and entertainment. People are on TV for very different reasons, you know, either to defend something or to support something. And as long as we take that particular stand, then you lose out some people, because it's not more just about learning, but someone is like, you know what, this is my stand, I'm defending this stand. Another person is like, no, I think we should take this stand. Then you lose the audience, pretty much, yeah.
I think we're going to be going into a short break right now. When we come back, I'd like to hear the different ways in which you think we need to draw in more women, more young people into the whole policy making conversation, because I think it's important that we have that. So we'll be right back on Here and Now. Welcome back. You're watching Here and Now. We're talking about young women having an influence in policy. I'm back with my panelists. Do women support women?
Yes. Yes.
I'm just going to put that out there. The perception many times is that at the level you're all at, which is, you know, you're now influential in terms of especially youth policy, I'd say even for you in sports. And sometimes, because a lot of these policies can be from a very patriarchal point of view, you then find that, whether it's by default, women then align with what the men's outlook is. And you're almost then working against other women or against policies that can help empower women. I know that sounds complex, but that's what I'm coming to. So what's your experience on that?
I think it's very complex what you're talking about, because a lot of times we don't realize we're in a patriarchal society. Even when you think about the women rep seat, and everyone is like, remove it, you know, like, it's wasting our time. It has its issues with it because of the people who are in there, but it doesn't mean that there are some women who are not using it for good. And affirmative action is something that's needed, because even when we look at representation, when it comes to governance, women were doing terribly in our region. When we even talk about East Africa, we're the last, frankly. And even when we talk about it with our community, when you talk to people face to face with the work that we do and the engagement that we have, and we talk about the qualities of a leader, and you ask the individual, does it matter if it's a man or a woman? Most people will say it doesn't. I would vote for a woman if she does well. And so it's not an issue of having women as leaders. It's how the public understands it, because that seat right now is viewed as a seat for girlfriends or people who are not qualified to be in that position. And we've seen it happen, but it doesn't mean that all of them are that way. And I think those are some of the things that we have to continue engaging. And I would say that I'm proud we support one another. I can say that confidently. And I can say that it's to the point to where we are constantly pushing that stereotype that women such as us shouldn't even be leading organizations in these sections, and we are. And so we're living proof that it's being done.
Okay.
And I believe, just to add on what Nerima is saying, women do support women. I don't have a background on law. I have not studied law. I didn't have a background on development work. But being in a space with likes of Nerima, Bina, and just the young women doing a lot of work in development space got me to start thinking. Because every time we'll complain about what's happening in the sports industry, but they'll be like, no, Q, you can do this. Let's approach it from this angle. But again, for me in sports has been only to realize that there are not so many women in the industry. I had to step out and get women support from women in different sectors with expertise, development, experts and business experts to advise you. But once we understand your passion, then you'll get support. But most of the time we talk about, do women support women from an arm of, there's a wrong thing that has happened, then we have to step, we have to be behind you because we want to support you. And again, just on the same issue of having the women reps position is critical and essential. Just, when you're speaking about what women in sports go through, there's no one who's gonna speak about women issues than we ourselves. Right. So the challenge has been that getting the right people with the right expertise to be on those seats. But it's a non-negotiable stuff that we're not going to discuss on removing the seats, but we're going to focus on the quality of people getting the seats and having the right strategies with the right content, with the right issues to be discussed on that table.
Okay, makes sense. Bina, you wanted to add?
Yeah, the fact that, we're talking about removing the women rep seats, and the problem when you ask people, it's about maybe a particular woman who's done something or a particular leader who's done something. But then just because that leader is bad doesn't mean that position is bad, So just because you can perform doesn't mean that office cannot perform, So we don't probably talk about, so we're talking about removing the whole office, and instead of talking about why don't we get this individual out.
Get the right person.
Yeah, but just like, oh no, let's remove the whole office.
And I want to come to that and get everybody's point of view and start with you. That's kind of touching on civic education in a sense, like getting people to understand the importance of, being involved in conversations around development policy. You have an interesting approach where how you get young women to buy into just being interested in national issues. Tell us about it.
So first of all, when I ran for the political seats, after you're done, you do your stock, your stock take, what went wrong, what happened, how can I improve the next time I decide to run for a seat. And part of it was the fact that there were no young women engaged in that particular, in the campaign. So in political parties, I couldn't see young women when we go for political party meetings. I couldn't see them in rallies, even tweeting online, even taking a picture online, even when you just do a poll online and be like, okay, fine, what do you think about this? So even just monitoring how they consume political information online, how they're contributing to the national issues taking place. But then if it's fashion, if it's makeup, if it's who's trending, which musician is trending currently, then you see they're engaging. So then it was more of, then how do we get these people to actually come on board and understand how governance affects them, How does politics intersect with family planning, How does it affect sanitation in your community? And what is the cost of you not engaging, So first of all, it was more of how do you get them to the room, Because even like she said, civic education, even the moment you hear civic education, it's so boring, At least, the moment you just hear, what's civic education,
Right.
And the fact that also in this country, it's not part of our education curriculum, and it starts way late. And then the people actually who teaches civic education, unfortunately, it's NGOs. So it's like that's the role of NGOs to do it. So it's the role of NGOs. If when you tell someone about the challenges of the community, they're thinking, why isn't that NGO speaking up against this? Why isn't Siasa Place talking? You're not looking at it in terms of why am I not speaking up?
Okay.
Why is Nerima not doing this?
Okay.
So it was more of how do we bring them to the room? And we began using glam up, So we are like, what? If you come to our sessions, you'll be glammed up. And young women like Instagram, me, I've never seen someone with a bare face on Instagram. As in, I rarely see someone with a bare face on Instagram. Well, except Nerima. Nerima's confidence is on one.
It's on another level.
It's on another level. I can she's like, me, I like myself like this,
So it was to get them in because the appeal of I'm going to be glammed up and then I'll listen to you.
Because people like looking good, and when you're young, when you're young and when you're in campus, you like looking good. You like you like going out. So we began introducing glam up session, and when you come for the glam up session, we're like, okay, fine. Now after this is how politics affects you. So we began having political conversations while girls are being glammed up, and we're like, what? You can actually look good and care about politics, because also most of the time we see the people who advocate for politics. We're like, hey, me want to look like that one. No.
But did it translate? Did you feel like they understood it, embraced it? What have you seen? What lessons have you learned from the program?
From the sessions?
From the session.
Yes, it did, because majority of the people who came to the session didn't see how politics affects their day-to-day life, because, you're in school, your parents are taking care of you, or maybe your husband, or maybe your boyfriend. So actually when you talk about corruption, someone is thinking, how does it affect me? Sugar prices went up. It doesn't affect her because she's thinking, someone bought sugar for me. Someone paid rent for me. Someone is fueling my car. But then for you to break it down for them to see, okay, fine. This is how unemployment is connected to poor governance and leadership in this country. And this is how you can step up, and not just step up for yourself, but then step up even for another person who might not have that particular voice to just voice their issues. So for them to get to that particular level and to even decide, because most guys think, voting, me, I won't vote. For what, So most people just engage with the last process of, electoral, when it comes to elections, people engage with just the last stages, which is voting.
Right.
And for them to understand, I just don't need to wait till the very last stage of voting. I need to understand what happens in between here before I even cast my vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'd want to then get from you, based on that, is how do you all think we can begin to get more women to embrace leadership, to embrace a space where they say, I want to sit here and I want to be a part of influencing this policy, plugging into this development because it affects many of us. Some women, and I stand to be corrected because the three of you are in the space, are intimidated. Either they feel like it's, again, not their place. As a woman, they're too young, they don't have the understanding. But they have the passion, they see what's going wrong, they just don't know where to start. How do we then rope them into the conversation, young men and women as well? What do you think?
I think for us as an industry is to go back to get the basics right. Access to sports participation is critical, because once they get into that space, they will start understanding on matters that affect their lives. Once they understand issues that are affecting their lives, then they will start acting upon them. And acting means to understand what are these rules or guidelines in this space. And basically, if we break down, a policy is a guideline that protects whatever, protects someone from something else. So if they get into that space, participate and understand their rights and understand what should actually they deserve as benefits, then they will be able to participate. And the other thing is creating an environment that allows women and youth and the disadvantaged, especially persons with disabilities, for my industry. Because many a times you get different people giving opinions and recommendations on matters affecting persons with disability, youth and women. But they're not experienced. They don't know what these people are going through. So being on the ground with these players and different, different disadvantaged groups, for them to understand that if we don't, just as Bina said, if we don't speak up, if we don't first understand what is affecting us, and if we don't speak about it, then nobody will speak about it. We'll keep doing bottom up, develop policies, then bring it down for participation, then implement it from the top. So I think bare minimum for us as an industry is access to sports, and not only high performance sports, but a healthy generation that involves parents have a role to play in it, teachers have, education institutions have a role to play. Generally, it's a community. It's a community thing where all the stakeholders have roles to play in it, but it boils down to access to it and participation in the industry and understanding the space and having the confidence to speak up to what is rightful for you as a human person.
I think participation is key. And a lot of times when we engage with youth, depends. If they're in universities, a lot of women don't even want to enter student council or student leadership. They're like, it's not my forte. But then once you break down to them why they need to, or even the youth who are in the communities, we tell them they know public participation is happening, but they don't attend. So I'm like, attend, ask critical questions, engage. It's as simple as watching the news or reading a newspaper, understanding what's happening in our country, and concerning yourself with the issues and understanding the issues and asking the right questions.
Yeah, and I think also for me, even when it comes to involving more young people, visibility is very key, because you cannot aspire to what you don't see. So the more you don't see even young people and young women in those spaces, then you tend to think, you know what, that's not my space, because you don't see people who look like you, who think like you, or maybe who talk like you. You're like, you know what, that's the space for those other people, or that's a space for those other women, because you don't see people like you there. So also documenting, there, like you said, there are 20-year-olds who are doing amazing stuff out there. Look at the Quintas of this world who are in sports, and if I wasn't in this space, I knew her through a friend. And you can imagine, I didn't even know her through social media or even through media interviews. I knew her through a friend. But if more people even saw more young women in sports who are doing the kind of work that she's doing, then they would actually realize, you know what, I need to join Quinta in doing this. Because we have women who are passionate about sports, but maybe they don't even know how to even enter that particular space, because they're thinking, I have to maybe approach this man to help me do these. They're thinking, you know what, they're going to think I'm crazy because I'm a woman wanting to enter sports, because they haven't seen her or the likes of her. So documenting and visibility is very, very key in terms of showing, you know what, anybody needs to and can aspire to such certain positions, in this country.
All right.
Yeah.
I know our time is up, so I'll just ask a question and then hear your yes or no, but I'm sure it'll be a resounding yes. But do you feel like, are you hopeful about the future for young people in Kenya?
Oh, definitely yes.
Okay.
Definitely yes.
Yes, have to be.
I am.
You are? Okay.
Yes, I am.
That's encouraging. I was hoping for nothing less. But thank you all so much for the incredible work you're doing and for just inspiring a huge, big generation of young people. Thank you. And, I wish you all the best in 2022.
Oh yes, and come and vote, come and vote. Because
Voting
people
is
just tell
important,
you that
yes.
and then they don't come
Yeah.
and vote. They're like, we are praying for you. That's all they say.
No, really. So people should vote, right? Okay. Now, I know I made a joke there at the end about how my panelists can be participating in 2022, but it wasn't entirely in jest, and here's why. People like Bina and Quinta and Nerima and Liz are really a testament to the power that youth have in influencing policy. And you're watching this as a young person. You have a voice that you can use to inform decisions that are made on a national level in your country. The country is yours and the future is yours. So be sure to engage in public participation, hold your leaders accountable at a county level, at a national level, participate. It's the only way we can strive towards the country that we want. I'm Janet Bogwa. Thank you for watching Here and Now on NTV, and thank you to Fairview for allowing us to film here. Goodbye.